Hi, Rob Gibson with the Cross Ministry Group. I want to ask you a question about your expectations. Really, I want to talk about expectations and what you're expecting from the journey that you're on. And are you aiming for a false summit? The picture I have in my mind is climbing. Like when I've climbed some 14ers, and maybe you've done some hiking in mountains or been on the Appalachian Trail, and you got a pack on your back, you're climbing, and you see the summit, or what you think is the summit. You're like, when I get there. And then you get there and you're like, oh, this isn't the real summit. There's another one. We've only made it partway up the mountain. There's more to go. And what I relate this to in my own journey is there's a future orientation. There's an expectation when I get to that summit, what am I going to have? When I get to that summit, then I'll have joy. Or when I get to that summit, then I'll be happy. When I hit that point there, then I'll be respected. Then I can rest and I'll have fun, or I'll be affirmed and I'll be loved, whatever it may be. And then we get to that place. For example, when I get married as a younger man, when I get married, then, boy, won't that be blissful? There'll be joy, there'll be sexual satisfaction all the time, and it'll just be great. And then you actually get married. You find, well, that's not always the case. It's not always what we expected. In business, when I'm successful in business, then I'll have the power and the status, and I'll be important. Or if you get all the toys that you might want to have, once I have all my toys, then I'll have the fun that I want to have. Or maybe it's around church. When we find just the right church, then we'll have great community. There'll be grace, there'll be love, forgiveness, and then you get into church and you find out, well, church is just what church is. A place with a bunch of broken people. And so the question really is, what am I expecting from the journey? And am I sometimes have my sights on a false summit? Even after you continue to go up the 14ers and you get to the top of the 14er, you're like, okay, that took a lot of work. Here I am. It's a great thrill to get here. But then you look around and it's like, well, there's a whole bunch of other 14ers to go up, 14,000-foot mountains, for those of you not familiar with that term. So the question really is about, what are my expectations? And sometimes we climb and we climb and we climb with an expectation of when I get there, I'll have what I want. But oftentimes, unrealistic or unexpressed, or to some degree, uninformed expectations, i.e., I thought that was a summit, uninformed expectation. It's not the summit, it's just part of the journey. But those uninformed, unexpressed expectations can lead us to resentment. If you've ever done this, you're climbing along, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so good, I'm going to be at the summit. And you get there and you're like, shoot, there's some discouragements, there's some letdown, maybe even anger and resentment of, this isn't the summit, this isn't what I expected it was, and there could be some sadness. A friend of mine that's done a lot of addiction work says, expectations, especially unexpressed and unexplored expectations, are prearranged resentments. Expectations are prearranged resentments. This isn't to say we shouldn't have any expectations, but this is to say we ought to flesh them out and understand what's behind them. What am I really after? What is my deep, holy longing behind this expectation? And because sometimes when they're unrealistic and unexpressed, they do lead us to a place that can be really problematic. And this can happen in every area of our life, all kinds of areas that we can expect something out of it. And so my encouragement is to think about, what's the summit? And when my eyes are focused there, what am I expecting it to give me? One. And here's another piece of this. What I'm aware of is sometimes climbing a 14er or marching on the Appalachian Trail, there's times that you just get tired. And so you stop and you sit on a rock. And as I'm sitting there resting, taking the pack off, getting some water, sitting on that rock, it's from that vantage point that I'm looking around and going, oh, look, there's some wildflowers right here that I hadn't noticed as I was trudging up the hill and breathing heavy. Oh, there's a vantage point, there's a vista over there to a lake or whatever that I wouldn't have noticed if I haven't sat and turned this way on this rock. My point is that sometimes it's not about making the summit, but it's about experiencing what's there in the moment on the journey. Because for me, the summit is that's the euphoria, that's the bliss, that's the joy, that's the fun, that's the rest. And until my personality is wired this way, until I get there, I won't have that. But I wonder if, as we're climbing the summit, towards the summit, we should be focused less on the summit and more on what's here right now, what's present to me here and now. Because really, Augustine said this. I want to read this quote to you. He said, God is always ready to give us good things, but our hands are too full to receive them. And so there's a reality that wherever we are, whatever's going on in the moment, God is there to give us good things. And sometimes I'm aware on the journey, if the journey isn't everything I want it to be, and if it's the summit that I'm really looking forward to, then I'm not expecting much from God in the present moment. And when that's the case, if there is any disturbance on the journey where I am, then my expectation is, God, it's got to be joy right now. There's got to be calm, no storms where I am right now. But the reality is, I have a couple of pictures that come to my mind. One is Jesus is in the boat, and the disciples are crossing the Sea of Galilee, and a storm is raging. There's a reality that they wake Jesus up because they're like, we're going to die. This is a real mess. And he says, ye of little faith. Do you not know I'm over all of these storms? It's in the midst of that stormy journey, that there was something there for them to learn and to experience about Jesus' presence and Jesus' love and provision for them. Same when Jesus goes into Jerusalem on, leading up to the Palm Sunday is the word I'm thinking of, is leading to his crucifixion. Everybody's expecting, here comes our king. He'll take over, he'll straighten this out, kick the Romans out, and he'll be king of Israel. And Jesus had a much bigger plan. And so the much bigger plan involved a whole lot of stormy times in that week ahead. The summit that they saw was a false summit. Jesus just being king of Israel. And he's like, no, I'm king of everything. And so I just want to encourage you to, one, check your expectations. What are we really thinking that summit's going to bring to us? And two, to look right where you are right here and now and to wonder, God, what do you have for me right here and now? It's like the psalmist that says, be still and know that I'm God. In the midst of the battle, drop your hands and just look around and watch what I'm doing. Look for the wildflowers that might be right present to you in this very moment, rather than the next summit and the next summit and the next summit. Here and now, in the present, in his presence in the present, there is goodness and there is joy. So I just want to encourage you to slow down on your journey to the summit and look around, see what's there. There may be some goodness that God has for you in